Alright, welcome to my second part of the car rigging tutorial. As you can see, this is where we just left off with most of our basic rig functionality built up. Now, the first thing we have to do is test our rig for possible problems. This is something we haven't done up until now. And the main thing is, it's really important that your rig works when you move it, which is why we placed this root controller here, the slide pivot. But it's also important you can rotate your rig in any way you like, and it just remains functional without stuff flipping the wrong way. We're just going to start with basically turning our rig around to check if there are any problems. So this seems to look fine, until all of a sudden our rig seems to invert here, and as we can see, it slowly rotates around, and we see that these dummies at the back also have this problem, which leads me to believe that the cause for this are these line axle fronts rotating, which actually cause our center dummy to also rotate. Now, thing is, these line axle front and line axle rear have look-at controllers, and these look-at controllers have a setting for an up node here. Now, what is an up node? A look-at controller only works over certain axes, and it doesn't know how to determine which direction will be up on the object. You can have this by default set to world, which will have it automatically pick something aligned to the world, but you can also select a specific node for that. So we're going to uncheck world, click this none box that was just enabled, and we're going to select this slide pivot here. We're going to do the same thing for this one at the back. Uncheck world, click none, and pick the slide pivot. You can see the name is entered in the box there. Then we select the slide pivot again, and we're going to try rotating it again. And as you see, we have fixed this problem. So keep that in mind. The up node for a look at is something you could be ignoring for quite a while, and they could show up later and cause some problems. So remember that one as an interesting way to fix things. Now, rotation over the z-axis is working. We should try rotation over other axes. See, this works. This also works. We're going to do the ultimate test, which is just free rotation. Yeah, we can see everything is remaining in place like it should. Alright, now let's just check for some other functionality. I'm going to move these up and down. And as we can see, there's a bit of a problem here. It is doing the body roll, but it's not doing the it's not doing the pitch anymore. So we're going to have to fix that problem. We're going to move this one back by pressing undo a few times. Now the cause for that is because we use this link info to disable all the rotations, making the rotation of this object solely dependent on the orientation constraint. As you can see here, it's constrained to the line axle front and the line axle rear. These are doing the body roll, but these are not pitching and adding to the pitch of this node. So we're probably going to have to switch these orientation targets and exchanging them for new ones. What I'm going to do is make these two nodes accumulate all the body roll and pitch for each axle, and then this body suspension node will have those two as a orientation target. So what we need to do is, moving these up and down, add pitch to these little dummies. I'm going to do that with a look at. Now, problem with a look at is you can't have object A look at B and object B look at A. You have to put an intermediary node in there. So for that, we're going to create a new dummy, this, and we're going to call it dummy front axle look at. Using our align tool, click here, align it to XYZ, hit OK. We're going to link it to the front axle so it moves up and down the same way and it rotates also. Then we're going to select this dummy front axle center, hit animation, constraints, and create a look at constraint to the other node. then hit Q, select this one, and make another look at constraint. But this time you can see it's not allowing me to select this one. It's just Max doesn't allow you to do it, but you can select this one. So we hit that. It's kind of annoying. It always switches back to move tool. Now we need to switch out the orientation targets for the body susp dummy. So we will delete both and add these two. I'm going to move it up and down again. And what do we see? We see something strange going on here. It's actually inverting the roll. There's a few reasons for that. That means our coordinate systems for certain dummies are a little bit messed up. We're going to check if that look at didn't do anything strange to our dummies. So we're going to select them. To use the move tool in local mode allows you to check the orientation of a certain dummy. If we select this one, we can see the X is pointing back, the Y is pointing to the left. Here we can see it's flipped. So we're going to have to change that around. You can just easily do that by going to the motion tab here. Then in the look at properties, there's a look at axis. We use the flip button here, and you can see they're now both aligned correctly. Let's test again. And it's still not working correctly. So what we need to do for that, something we've actually changed before. The transform rule is set to local. We're going to change this to world. So once it's set to world, select this one again and test. And you see the body roll is actually gone now. The reason for this is the up node I just talked about. You can actually see it from here. If we pull this one down, this dummy just keeps pointing upwards, aligned with the world. It needs to point up the same way as this axle here. So as our final step for fixing our problem is selecting the front axle center, and then unchecking the world up node and selecting these as an up node. Same thing here, uncheck world and pick the rear axle. As you can see, these are all linked through and have their up node completely set to this one. Since the axle has the slide pivot as up node, and the front axle center or the axle centers have the complete axles as their up nodes. So we're going to select this wheel again, move it up and down, and as you can see, it's rolling, it's pitching, it's working just like it should. I'm going to test again by selecting this and just rotating. Yep, there we go. It works without anything funny. So that was part of a little bit of problem fixing. Rigging is quite a complex matter, and it can happen frequently that coordinate systems, alignments, constraints just fight with each other. There's a lot of tools at your disposal to fix this, like the link info tab here, the up nodes that you can set, constraints and everything, but you really need to get this a little bit into your fingers to be able to fix things. So just remember a few of those solutions I showed you. Now, there's one very important thing in our rig which you might have thought about already that's missing. We can move our wheels up and down, we can completely roll our body, but we can't steer yet and we can't drive yet. The wheels don't rotate. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build steering functionality, which of course requires more rig components. For that reason, I'm going to create a new dummy here. I'm going to call this one dummy steering look at. Actually, I'm going to call it dummy steering left look at, and I will move it forward a lot more, and now I'm going to align it to this one, but not on the x-axis, so that it actually exactly in front of these wheels. Then we're just going to duplicate it over here, change the name to dummy steering right look at, use my align tool again. There we go, aligned. And what we need to do now is we're going to use, as you could have guessed, look at functionality to steer these wheels. Now, these center dummies are the ones that move up and down. These intermediate ones, which I've placed in between only on the front, the steering hubs, are the ones that will be looking at this dummy. So we're just going to do animation, constraints, look at constraint, like we've done a million times before. Hit this one, select the left steering hub, and add another constraint. There we go. Now if you select both of these and move them left and right, you can see our wheels are nicely pointing in that direction. Now, as you know, lookats can do some funny stuff, so we're going to unhide the mesh just to check what happened with the wheels. As you can see, my wheels have actually turned around 180 degrees. So we're just going to fix that easily by selecting this one, the one we just added lookat constraint on. We're going to check keep initial offset, and same here, keep initial offset. As you can see, the wheels jump back into position. And just as a little test, there you go, nicely steering wheels. Now it's a little bit unwieldy to have to move these two dummies. I'm actually going to move them forward a little bit more. We're going to place them over here, and I'm going to add a spline as the controller for that. So I'm just going to draw this one on the floor, select some funky color like orange for it, and this is just really cosmetic and not so important. I'm going to scale it a little bit so it's clear that it works on two dummies. Now we need to make sure this one is in the middle, so deselect local system and go to view. It's not the x-axis, it's the y-axis. There we go, it's in the center, and we need to align it, not the y position, it needs to remain on the floor. There we go, this one's nicely in place. We're going to call it steering lookat. There we go. And obviously we will just link these two little dummies to the controller. As a result, we can just move one controller and both wheels are steering nicely. So now we've got these two independent controllers, and if we rotate this one, you can see, ooh, funky stuff happening here. What we need to do for that is create a root controller, which will be the root of everything. Every controller, every part of the rig will be attached to that, and if you want your car to drive around, you will move that exact controller. I'm going to create a rectangle as the base of the car, just approximating size here. Choose another funky color. What am I going to pick for this? I'd say purple. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker so it's obvious it's important, and I'm going to align it to the center of the car here. X and Y position, but not Z position. I want it to remain on the floor. I'm going to call this root in capitals because it's quite an important one. Now, as you know, we're all about keeping our file clean. We have our rig components all added in the rig layer, but we actually want to be able to see just the controllers when the rig is finished. So we're going to select those, create a new layer which we will call controllers, and if we now hide the rig, we can see all the rig components disappear, but the controllers are still there, which is really handy. Now, as I said, the root has to be the base component to which everything else is linked or constrained, so we will select these two secondary controllers and link them to the root. And as you can see, we're going to test our rotations now by rotating this root. It's really important you do this crazy rotation a lot to check if everything is working. Now, there's another thing we'd like to be able to control the controller, which is the body momentum up here. Now we still have this dummy, and dummies are not so visually pleasing to look at, so we're going to create another controller to use. I'm going to pick a star, just because it's cool. Draw this one on the floor here. You can actually change its shape a bit, doesn't matter so much. It's a little bit thick. I'm pull that down, and then align this star completely with that part up there. Actually, I want a different color there. I'm going to pick green for that. Right, so we will link this star to this one, to the slide pivot, because when we drift we actually want the momentum controller to come along. I'll show you the drifting functionality in a moment. And now we just want this one to move along with the star. We can't just link it because it's already been linked. You can check that by using graph editors and then going to new schematic view. You can actually see the selected object is already linked to dummy body, one of the dummies down there. So we're going to have it move along in a different way. Luckily we've been using that method a lot. It's just a simple position constraint. There we go. Alright, so if we move this star now, you can see it's nicely controlling the body momentum. We're going to unhide the mesh for a moment just to test things. That's working. Just like this thing. That's actually also working just like it should. You might notice this IK handle is not rotating, but that doesn't really matter since only the position of that object matters. Alright, we're going to hide the mesh again. Now there's something else missing in this rig also. We've got steering, we've got sliding, we've got momentum controls, but we don't have controllers yet to move these wheels up and down. Now we've used these path constraints to move the wheels up and down. That's actually a little bit of a downside because the only way to access these is by selecting this single dummy and moving it up and down, or by accessing the percentage along path here. See, this is not exactly 50, so I'm going to change that back. Let me just check the other ones. Here, this one is set to 50.501. We don't want that. Check the back also. That's what happens with all this testing. We get this irregularities. But before we get to creating these suspension controls, there's another thing I want to do. Imagine you're animating this thing and every controller has a default position, a position in which everything is neutral, where the car isn't steering, where the car isn't moving, anything at all. You want to be able to quickly jump back to that exact position and orientation. We can do that by, this is quite a complicated thing, we can add another layer of transforms, position, scaling, rotation on top of the existing ones, which allows us to save the original default position and jump back to it with a single click. This is called freeze transform. You can access this by holding down Alt, which I'm doing right now, and then right clicking. You can see here you get a freeze transform option. If you click that, Max warns you that if you do it you will lose constraints or animation that was applied to these objects. But you can use transform to 0 to get the objects back to this transform. I'm going to continue, and see, the up node is not lost by this, but if I'm going to do it to this object here, hold down Alt, freeze transform, hit yes when it warns you, I actually didn't even lose this constraint here. That's funny because normally it does. Well, don't worry about it. And I'm going to do the same thing for these. Alt, freeze transform, yes. Very important. Test again. This is working. Test my steering. It's also working. And that's really surprising. This one's not giving me any grief. Well, then again, you just have to re-enable the constraint by adding it again. Alright, so now we have this freeze transform. I'm going to show you how you use this. So we've moved this one way out of place, that one the wrong way, it's drifting. So we just select the controllers, Alt, and hit transform to 0, and everything jumps back in place. This is really handy to do, but you have to remember to do it before you start adding parameter constraints and that sort of stuff, because it destroys them. Right, so we've just created this all these controls. Now we're going to add the controls for the suspension. I was talking about the fact that it's not so easy to move this object along the path constraint because it's a little bit hidden. You see, the only access you have to it, if you check this this list of controllers here, is via position path constraint %. That's the only way to change it through through expressions and everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to add actually just a second path constraint object here, which will be the controller, along which a controller circle will move up and down, and those will be wired together via a float expression. So we'll just select this one. Actually, I'll select two. Shift move them. Let's say we'll move them about here, and we'll copy them. Actually, rename them, and we're going to call them line wheel control front left and line wheel control rear left. So let me just check this position. This one is at minus, let's just make it 63 to make things easy. Do the same thing here, minus 63. To select these, notice how I select the bottom line, the one that moves the wheels, not the one that moves the suspension anchors. Move these as well. Just copy them, and I will put them in position 63. Actually, this doesn't really matter the position. I just like to keep things tidy. There we go. Select these. Let me just check on which layer this is. All keeping things tidy. These are on controllers. No, wait, they're not. They're on rig. But yeah, because if you copy an object, it stays on the layer you just it was assigned to before. So let's unhide these controllers again. We have these paths here, and we actually still need to rename these. It's boring to do, but it needs to be done. Because the reason you do this also is you're not sure if you're going to be the person using this rig, so you want everything to be transparent and easy to follow in case the person using it needs to understand it better, edit it, or even wants to learn from it. So we have these paths created. I'm going to create our controllers now, which are of course again circles. Oh, I've selected line. It's a circle we need. There we go. And this is something I try to do also. I try to keep colors between two identical sides similar. I'm going to make the left side blue, and I'll make the right side red. So we're going to rotate this thing 90 degrees upwards. I just hit A to enable this rotational snapping, so I can nicely do it 90 degrees. And we are going to align that thing here. It's using pivot points. I might have misclicked here. Let's see where the pivot point is off. Yeah, there we go. That is correct. And we will call this one wheel front left. I'm not naming these controllers very complex because, well, most of the time you'll just be looking at 10 controllers at most, so the names can be simple. Duplicate this one and call it wheel rear left. Align it here. Okay. There we go. I'll duplicate them. Hit the align tool. And we are not going to align over X position. I'm going to change these colors to, let's pick this red over here. There you go. It's just easy to see which side you're working with if they have these color codes. Now what we need to do is something boring from the last video. Path constrain these again and fix up the path constraints. So hit them here. Select the keys, then go down and set them to 50% default. Select this one as well. Animation, constraints, path constraint. Click. Delete these darn keys. Type in 50. Luckily this time we only have to do 4 instead of 8. Animation, constraints, path constraint. Click. Delete keys. Type 50. And there we go. Then select this one. Animation, constraints, path constraint. Click. Let's just do it the other way around, just to be crazy. And delete the keys. There we go. Now we have all our controllers nicely aligned to those paths and constraint also. Just need to make sure these are on the correct layer. Select them in case they're not. Hide the rig. Yep, there they are. They're on the nice layer. So you don't even see these lines they're constrained to when you hide all the rig components. Now all we need to do is we'll be handling these controllers. If we move them up and down, we also want these things inside here to move around, move up and down also. So just like link their percentage along path through. Now we can do that with a float expression, but I'm going to use something new here, which is similar to float expression but less powerful, because you can only use one variable in an expression. It's called wire parameters. You can wire a parameter to another parameter or a controller via a little expression. You do this by selecting an object, right-clicking, go to wire parameters, and then it gives you a list of hierarchical parameters that you can access. What we need is transform, position, path constraint, percentage. Then you get a little target line, and you have to target the another object you want to wire its parameters to. So we're going to select this dummy for the wheel hub. Click it. Gives you a list again. We want the same thing, the percentage, and there we go. Now you get this list here with controllers, which you might know from the float expressions. This isn't very complex, and then you get these buttons in the center, which are quite important actually. These control the direction in which they will influence each other. You can type expressions here. Select one of these buttons. It disables the expression window here, so you can only type an expression in the other window. So we've actually got our wheel FL controller here, which we want the one dictating the wheel hub's position. So this is actually the correct. I think I need to hit OK first and hit connect. There we go, they're connected. If we move this up and down, you can see it's nicely following along. So you see, wire parameters are really not all that complex. You just select two values, type in a possible expression. I didn't even do it here. Then choose a control direction, hit connect. You can disconnect them, or you can also update them if you've changed the expression, for example. I use this mainly because it's plain faster than typing in a float expression. We're going to have to do this for every wheel. The only downside of this thing is it's not so easy to access this window. If I close it, it's actually faster to just redo the whole connection process here. So make sure you're correct the first time, or that you test your expressions without closing the window. So here we go, wire parameters, transform, position, path constraint, percentage. Hit this one, and there we go. This direction, connect. I'm pretty sure it's going to be correct. Yep, there we go. Working nicely. Also, I'm using path constraints again for these wheels here for the same reason that I used them for the wheel hubs. If you rotate the rig in crazy positions, you still want them to work, and these lines enable this by just quite rigid in functionality. Wire parameters, transform, position, path constraint, percentage. Once you know how to do it, it's really, really fast. See, we did it in pretty much 3 seconds or something, so that's great. Oh, misclick there. percentage. Control direction, connect. You saw the name of the certain controller turn into a color when we hit connect. This just helps you find the particular object that's been wired via parameters. Okay, we're just going to rotate this thing around, see how it works, and yeah, you see something funky is going on with these wheels. They're actually not updating. And if we rotate this, then they're all going to hell. So what we need to do is we need to set the orientation of these objects right. This is mostly a cosmetic thing also, but it just looks messy if you don't do it. We actually want these to, again purely cosmetic, to turn along as the vehicle steers. So we're going to add a constraint, orientation constraint, to the second one here, because that's the one that steers. See, it jumps out of position. We're just going to keep initial offset. Select this one and orientation constraint it to the steering hub. Oh, I think I might have misclicked there. Let me just check that. Yeah, that's a wheel hub. We don't need that one. We want the steering hub. There we go. Keep initial offset. Let's just test that by selecting this. There we go. Our controllers are nicely steering along. What happens if we rotate our route around? Then we see another problem. You see, it's the up nodes I was talking about again. These steering hubs actually don't have an up node set yet, so we didn't test this thoroughly. Luckily, we know perfectly how to fix this, so we're going to do that quickly. Select this again, rotate, there we go, perfectly fixed. Now we just need to fix these at the back. We're just going to constrain those to the wheel hubs. Constrain, orientation constraint, and keep initial offset. Turn around so it's easier to see. Animation constraints, orientation constraint, and keep offset. Okay, time for another round of testing. Yep, that seems to work. Now, what happens if we select two of these and move them up and down? Yep, we're controlling this axle. So if it runs on the sidewalk, for example, that's all working nicely. Let's just unhide our mesh for a while and see if everything is still working, because let's hide the rig even to make it easier. Sometimes problems are only apparent if you can actually see what the mesh is doing, but this is actually looking quite nice. Yep, the steering is working. Try these. There we go, it's working nicely. You'll notice these mesh parts are jumping through each other, but yeah, this is just like I said, a quick mesh I made, so it doesn't matter so much. If you're actually doing this as a rig for production or for an animation you're making, then yeah, you should pay attention to that sort of stuff. It's dependent on the length of the lines that we've created to which the suspension anchors are linked. It's not so hard to change those. I could actually scale them even here, but it doesn't matter so much. I mean, it's a small problem. Okay, so we're going to hide the mesh again. Now there's one last thing that our car cannot do yet, which is actual driving. The wheels don't rotate yet. For this we're going to do something special, something new again, because I want to teach you guys as many new things as I can in this video. I want the driving. I'm not going to do it with some complex scripted interface to which the script calculates how the car is moved and rotates the wheels. What we're going to do is a solution in between. We're going to add a slider to the route, and when you increase that slider, the wheels will start rotating when you hit play and when an animation runs. So to do that, we need to be able to add a slider to the route. You can add sliders by adding an attribute holder, which is a modifier, it's actually an empty modifier because it's just meant to hold attributes. And how do you add attributes? Well, you go to animation, go to parameter editor. Then you get this editor where you can add parameters which you can wire or add expressions to. Gives you a big interface to create attributes. You can see this is, the bottom is a preview of what your attribute looks like. We want to call this one drive speed. Enter. I'm not going to change the size, but I want to change it from -100 to 100, since I also want the car to be able to drive backwards. So we want negative and positive reaches. Default is at 0. Default is no movement. For the rest, I'm just not going to touch that. So when you have this attribute holder selected on your object, you hit add, and it is added into the custom attributes here. I'm going to go ahead and add a second one here, which is for our drifting functionality, which I've talked about. That is going to be rear spin. And I'm going to actually make that a little bit smaller. Let's say 50. And we're going to add that as well. There we go. That drifting functionality is actually not so hard, because if you have this slide pivot here now and you just rotate this, you can see the tail end of the car breaks out, but it's still steering in the correct direction, just like you'd want with drifting animation. Now we've added these attributes, and we're going to wire these. Well, not actually wire, we're going to use an expression for that because it's a little bit more complex. Going to have these rotate these specific dummies. How do we do that? We select the dummy that has to rotate. This is the actual wheel. You see, that's why we added these dummies on top of each other. You don't want your wheel hub to be rotating along its, let me see what axis that is. It's the y-axis you want rotation over, because that would just mess up the rig completely. That's why you need to add like layers of dummies on top of each other to have the functionality work as good as possible. Motion tab, that's what we need now. And as I said, we want to wire the Y rotation. So we're going to select Y rotation, add a float expression, sliders. We only need one variable here. Create, and we will assign it to a controller. And luckily, this one's easy to find for once, since you just need to open the root, go to modified object, attribute holder, custom attributes, drive speed. That's the one you need. Hit OK. You see, it's been assigned to a controller. And now, this is a little trick. I've talked about the wheel being rotated over time when you hit the animation play button, which is down here. I'll show you in a moment. You can actually use the time in Max via a little variable that's always known in an expression. It's called nt in capitals. So if you multiply nt by our slider value, it will just multiply time by speed, which will result in our wheel rotating. So it's a really simple expression. I'm just going to copy it because I'm lazy and I don't want to type it again. Hit evaluate, then close. Let's just test that. We're going to increase the drive speed here. Set it to 5, for example. Then hit the play button. What do we see? You can see our object is rotating, but positive drive speed is actually running backwards. So that's not so hard to fix. We just need to go back to that expression. Select my object, the expression, properties, and just add a minus in front of it, and then evaluate, close. If we hit play now, it's nicely driving forward. And the cool thing is, since this is in local space, if you rotate the wheels, it's also working just like it should. So we're going to, well, let's use our little trick here. Transform to 0. There we go. Okay, so we have to do this for each wheel. Luckily it's not too much work. Select it, rotation, Y rotation, assign a float expression, paste this, and let's not forget my minus, create slider, assign to controller. Most of the time it's still open, so just select drive speed here. Evaluate close, hit play, and you see both wheels are rotating. Right, so for the rear wheels, for our drifting, it's a little bit different. We actually want our rear spin slider to add to the drive speed rotation, so that you can drive at a certain speed but have your rear wheels turn faster for burnouts, for drifting, for anything like that. So we need to write a little bit different of an expression there. Nothing difficult, just like this thing. We're going to start the same way. Rotation, Y rotation, add a float expression. Slider, create, paste this, minus. But we're going to have to create another one. Just call it slider 2. Create. Let's first assign this controller. This one drive speed, and this one will be the second one, rear spin. So it's quite simple. As I said, you add them together. So just add them together between brackets before you multiply them. It's evaluate, and there we go. Now you can see they're rotating at the same speed, but if I select the, I can't select while it's animated. Select the root. Increase this one by 10. Hit play. You can see the rear one is rotating a lot faster than the front ones. So that's exactly what we want. I'm just going to go in here and select the expression. Go here and just create the same type of expression again. Create our slider. Create assigning to our controller. Let's actually open a lot of stuff here. Just drive speed, then create slider 2, which we will assign to rear spin. Okay, evaluate close, and that should be working. Now instead of looking at our boring rig components, let's just hide those, not the controllers, unhide the mesh, and hit play. And look at that, our car is spinning out its wheels. Actually, the speed needs to be a little bit higher, so you can actually even have it do stationary burnouts by just making this one, let's say 50, the max. There you go. It's doing a nice burnout. If you want to change the values of this thing, you need to select it and open the parameter editor, where it can actually, it shows you the ones that exist. Let me see, how do you do this one again? Objects, current, modifier, edit, delete. Then it gives you the ones you want to change. Select them and it churns out the settings for it. But just make sure you do it correctly in the beginning. It's not hard anyway. So there you go. Our rig has pretty much all of the functionality I wanted to add to it. You can move it nicely. Now the way you animate this thing to drive is you path constrain this bottom to a line. So for example, the car will be driving this nice little trajectory. You path constrain it to that. To deselect this, animation, constraints, path constraint, click it, jumps over there. And we need to enable it to follow. There we go. It's a bit annoying because it's going to flip around. There we go, flip. Okay, so if we animate this now, you can see the car is driving along it. You still need to manually add, for example, if it's going through a corner here, you need to move this to the side to simulate momentum. But actually you can get the steering, oh, that's not right, have this jump back. You can get the steering to steer for you by itself. How do you do that? You add another path constraint to the same path, and let's see what it's done here. Yeah, see, the problem is the at the beginning to watch out for this frame where you added, because yeah, I shouldn't have done that here. No, you need to watch out for the frame you added, but this controller will always be in front, which shows you how the car is actually steering to where it has to go. It's actually looking ahead and making adjustments because of the system we set up. Just watch out for the front and back of the path, because as you can see, it loops around. So there we go. You have a nicely working car. This sort of animation, you like you do like this, and then it's a bit tricky, just like this one. We're just going to freeze the mesh because we don't need to touch that. For example, you want it to drift in this corner, so you set it like that. I'm not keying things here, I'm just making an example. And well, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you use this sort of car rig. Hope you've learned something. If you have further questions, you can ask them in the comments. I'll try to reply to them, but can't promise anything. And yeah, that concludes my my tutorial. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and hope to see some awesome car animations with this sort of rig.